Hello, Internet. Today I want to go over a project I've been working on for a student and show how we can add Swagger UI API documentation or OpenAPI API documentation to a backend Python project. So let's go to the code. Here is the backend repository, and right now I have a link to the docs. This is what I'm going to show how to make today. This guy opens up and we have like the endpoints that are supplied. We have you can make sample requests, so we can try it out and see responses. Is pretty cool. And so basically I'm going to add a new endpoint to this API and walk through how to go about adding it to the documentation. And this, by doing so, I'll take you through each step of how this is built and how it works. Okay, so first we have the front-end application here. This makes requests to a backend application. The Python app in this repository is the backend here. So it's just like you have your app folder, here you have your roots. Everything is normal. And we're going to add a new root that, just for example, returns the number pi. So I'm going to go to the backend code here. Okay, so I'm in my roots file, and this is just a Flask, very simple, tiny Flask API. So I'm going to make a new root. Just going to copy this one. Call it pi. Does not require authentication. Let's see, how do we get pi in Python? Import math.py, okay. So I'm going to return a JSON object. So if you just return a regular Python object dictionary, it will convert it to JSON automatically with Flask. So I'm just going to call it number and return math pi. Then we need to import this math library. Okay. So I'm going to test that on my local machine. Oops. Test that on, oops. All right, here we go. Terminal pulled up. I'm using pipenv. I'll launch the shell for this backend. Launch the application and head over to Insomnia. This is a tool I've been using to develop the application, the backend. So it has different roots, and yeah. So it'll be pretty similar to this get user, get pi. Call the pi endpoint. We don't need authentication. And see, here we go. We have it working. So now let's add it to the documentation. We want to let our users of this API know that, yeah, we provide this endpoint. So right here in the docs folder of my repository, I have a document file called OpenAPI YAML. I'm going to add to this my new information, this new endpoint. Now, how did I create this? So this is following the OpenAPI specifications. If you go here, yeah, this is all the documentation on how to write a YAML file that will generate that API website, documentation website you saw in the beginning. I also have here in the same folder a Docker Compose file that pulls up an editor for me. So I'm going to launch that because it's really helpful. So I'm going to go into my docs folder, run Docker Compose up. This I can show you quick. It just runs the Swagger editor on port 8080. So I'm going to go back to the browser, open that guy up. And yeah, right, it already has the correct file loaded in it, probably because of cookies or something. But if you don't, you just here and you go import file and it'll open from your file system. So we can edit here to make things like really easy on ourselves, and we can see our updates right away. So let's do that. It's pretty similar to this guy, so let's copy that. Go down here, paste it, and one more. Yep, and this will be the Pi endpoint. That's we called it Pi, and it returns number.py. Okay. So the Pi endpoint, it doesn't have any tags. You can use tags to create these groups. You see all the stuff here under user. That's because it has the tags user. And this stuff can get quite complicated, but you see we have, let's go here. We have user, so that is this the get. So user endpoint is this endpoint. The get method is this one, so get. You see the summary text, it's this text. If you open it up, the description text is here. It doesn't require any parameters because it says it gets it from this auth token. What's the auth token? Well, that's kind of described here, and that comes from in the security schemas, because this is the user endpoint requires a JWT token to confirm your user. This one doesn't, so it's going to be simpler. So we can just get rid of this security block. We don't need it. Pi endpoint is simple. Get Pi. That's all it's going to be. Get Pi number of okay, so let's close this and see what we're building here. Okay, look, we have already started our endpoint here. And we can just say that actually we don't need a description on the response. It's very simple. And instead of returning a user, we can just define our schema right here. So type object properties number, and we can just copy and paste from a different one. And to create this originally, I did a lot of copy and pasted from this like pet store example. You can find that on the OpenAPI website. Yeah, multiple places. I'll put a link in the description so I don't have to find it right now. But yeah, the pet store has like every possible thing you could use. And what I'm doing here is a very small subset of like what is possible. Okay, so it kind of describes now. How's this doing? Properties, number, type integer. Okay, responses. Oh, it really needs the description. Okay. Oh, 2 B's. That's not right. Okay, this is looking good, but it needs a description. So we'll just put it back on here. Okay, nice. So we have our endpoint added to our documentation. But you see this documentation right now is living on localhost. Nothing has really been saved yet, so we need to save this. Save as YAML. I'm just going to save it. That'll go right to my downloads folder. I'm going to go back to my code editor. Going to copy that file over. Okay, so downloads, OpenAPI. I want to copy that to my docs folder. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and commit. So now that it's in the docs folder, you can see here that it has been edited. Yes. I'm going to add patches. So yeah, I want to add this new root, and shall I add this new section to the OpenAPI YAML? Yes, I want that guy. Okay. Okay, we added the Pi endpoint. So now, how do we get to that website, static website that everyone else can access about our documentation on our API? So the trick of this all comes from the GitLab CI. If you're not super familiar, this is another YAML file that defines how jobs work for GitLab. And I just copy and pasted this guy out of the jobs template and changed it slightly for my needs. There is one, I can show you how to do that. If you're here on your project and you don't have GitLab CI already set up, there will be one of these guys, like CI, add CI. You click that. Then there's some templates that you can pick from, and you can just pick the Swagger one. That's what I did. And I updated the version of Swagger UI they were using, and that's it basically. I set up my files, and that's it. So I have this GitLab CI set up. Now I'm going to go over to GitLab and take a look at the jobs pipelines. So every time commit to master is made, this pipeline runs. Clean up docs and editor. Okay, I don't see the Pi one. Maybe I need to push. Probably. Okay, should be a new job here. Nice. Okay, this is building a new pipeline is running. We see that here. We're waiting for it. And one trick that's important is if you want GitLab to make a use these GitLab pages, the static website hosting from GitLab pages, you need to, in your job, create an artifact under the path public. It's very important. Other directories, names won't work. Has to be public. I made this mistake going through the first time. So yeah, do public. That should work. Looks like we got a job succeeded here. Take a look at the pipeline. Yep, it passed. Added the Pi endpoint. Pages have been deployed. How do you know what the URL is for these pages? You can go to the settings of the repo, go to pages. Right here. And it'll show you it here. Nice. And now you can see that we have added this Pi endpoint to our API documentation. And yeah, so right now we are unable to test it here via the execute, via this, because the live production API does not have this endpoint. I have not deployed that yet. But these other ones work, like the client info works. And these guys, I'll touch on real quick and then that'll be it. These guys are more complicated because they require like a authorization token. So normally when you send the post request, like here, I'll demonstrate it. How about I get a user? You have to send this bearer token, and it's very long, right? I mean, it's huge. This is a JWT token, and yeah. So in this case, those are coming out of the app. Like once you log in, then you get a token. So in order to test it, someone would have to get the app running, log in with a real user, find a token. Then you can simply go here to authorize, paste the token in, get rid of this bear stuff, authorize, close that. Now we can, right here it's just sample data, but if we try it out and execute it, you can see we got like a real user here, real user's information, which is pretty cool. And again, this is set up via the security schemas HTTP bearer. So it's called user auth, and then endpoints that are authenticated have the security user auth. Yeah, I think that's all you need to know from that. So yeah, I hope you found this helpful, and I hope that you can hopefully follow these steps and add some Swagger documentation to your endpoint. It doesn't have to be written in Python. The steps you saw below, since we're manually editing a YAML document, it can be run for any language. There are libraries you can get more complicated and have sort of automatic generating and stuff, but if you're running a rather custom setup or structure of your application and you don't want to follow certain rules that an automatic generator might need, I think manually editing a YAML file is pretty easy, and it helps out your end users. They can simply read the documentation and they know exactly what they need to do. So yeah. All right. Until next time, thank you.